Episode number 909, Reflections on BNI's Journey, Part 2.
You're listening to the official BNI podcast with BNI founder and Chief Visionary Officer, Dr. Ivan Misner. Stay tuned for networking and referral marketing tips from the man who's been called the father of modern networking, along with suggestions and insights into getting the most from your membership in the world's largest networking organization, BNI.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the official BNI podcast. I'm Priscilla Rice, and I'm coming to you from Live Oak Recording Studio in Berkeley, California, and I'm joined on the phone today by the founder and the Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, Dr. Ivan Misner. Hello, Ivan. How are you, and where are you?
I am in Southern California this week. I'm here to support my daughter who's got a little surgery, so I'm taking the week off and here to support my daughter.
Oh, that's great. I hope she does well.
Yeah, she's been a trooper.
Yeah.
So we're following up on last week's episode, which is part 1 on reflections on BNI's journey, because this is our 40th anniversary. And the way we did this was I had someone who I did a radio interview or podcast where they had some really great questions. And so I shared the questions with you, and you're going to run them by me. And I'm going to, I'm elaborating, have an opportunity to elaborate even more on these podcasts. So let's see if we can do it in 2 episodes. Otherwise, we'll be doing a third.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. But it's great information. So even if it spills over into a third, it's still great. Okay. So the next section is called the evolution of BNI.
Yeah.
And the first question was, how has the concept of networking evolved since BNI's inception?
So the meetings are very much the same or really similar. If you went to a meeting in 1985 and a meeting in 2025, you'd recognize it. Although the name changed from originally it was called the network, but we needed a trademark, so we changed the name to BNI for the trademark. So other than the name, you'd recognize the organization. However, we have added to it over the years, and probably one of the biggest things in the evolution of the organization is the implementation of technology. BNI has been an early adopter to technology, and that surprises people because we're mostly in person. We have online chapters and hybrid chapters, but still quite a bit of in person. But technology has flattened the communication hierarchy. Things like this podcast. When I started BNI in 1985, this would have been unheard of, podcasts like this. Mm-hmm. I think we started this in around 2007, and it's enabled me to communicate directly with members. And I read all of the comments that are posted up on BNI podcast. And, the technology has really flattened the ability for us to communicate. And it's also made it affordable, because in 1986, the second largest line item in the BNI budget was the phone bill, believe it or not. Phone bill was incredibly expensive. But over the years, I don't even know where it is in our budget now. So technology has really evolved a lot. And of course, us going online, roughly 16% of our organization is still completely online. About 16% are hybrid, and the balance have gone back to meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What role has BNI played in shaping the global networking culture?
So I really believe that we've impacted that to some extent, because, when I started BNI, networking, we don't teach this in colleges and universities. We still don't. But networking was almost entirely face-to-face cold calling. People didn't understand that networking is really about building relationships. And I think the one thing that has helped influence and played a role in shaping the global networking culture is our philosophy of giver's gain. And giver's gain is more than a phrase to me. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world. And I think implementing that philosophy into the organization and trademarking it wasn't a bad idea either. I think doing those 2 things has helped to shape the global culture of networking to a very large extent.
Great. Yeah, I think giver's gain is incredibly unique in the business world. Yeah. And I love that it's there. Okay, well, how about what innovations or practices have been most impactful in keeping BNI relevant over the decades?
Yeah, I've got a pretty short answer on this one, and that's moving to online in 2020. It saved BNI. It saved many, many, many businesses that were in BNI. I had so many people come up to me after COVID and said, and they told me BNI saved their business, and the ability to still do business while COVID was, impacting people was amazing. And I mean, I think if COVID had hit in 1990 as opposed to 2020, it would have been completely different. BNI would have gone out of business. Hundreds of thousands of people would have gone out of business, and there would have been a lot more people who would die from it. And so I think we have really remained relevant by our integration of technology. And we now have 40 years of consecutive growth, year on year on year. Very few companies can say they've had 40 years of consecutive growth, but we have.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to move into a section on lessons learned.
Yeah.
And the first question is, what are the key lessons that you've learned as a leader during BNI's journey?
So I think there's a number of things. One of the first ones I learned was that ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. I'm going to repeat that. Ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. And when I was starting a BNI, I didn't know how to network. I had no idea how to network. I was method acting my way through the process and trying to figure out how you do this, how do you do it right, what's effective. I realized pretty quickly that being transactional was not the way to do it, but that you really had to be relational in the way you network. And so I was the poster child for ignorance on fire being better than knowledge on ice. And, as BNI was starting, I couldn't afford really expensive employees. And so I looked for people who were on fire, who were excited, who loved the concept of BNI and our philosophy of giver's gain. And they were trainable. They were willing to be trained and taught. And I think that's a lesson that is useful for all businesses, that sometimes ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. Now, the best is knowledge on fire, but you have to have a good payroll to be able to hire knowledge on fire. And that's why, in a BNI chapter, if you have somebody who really doesn't know how to network, but they're willing to learn, that can make a great member. So you want to look for people who are willing to learn, even if they don't have lots of experience in networking. The second thing is stick to the fundamentals. Don't reinvent the wheel. Oh my goodness. If I had to pick one thing that has been a problem since chapter number 2, it would be that. And we now have over 11,300 chapters as of this day. And
Wow.
it has always been an issue. People want to reinvent the wheel. They start making up stuff and go back to things that I did 20 years ago. Hey, I have a great idea. Why don't we do this? I'm like, I did that 20 years ago. Don't do that. Here's why. So stick to the fundamentals. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't mess with the system. And if you really, really, really want to be successful in business, do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times. And so many people do 1,000 things 6 times. And it doesn't have to be 6. It could be 5. It could be 7. You want to do 6 or 7 things 1,000 times. And that's one of the reasons why BNI works, is that we do it every week. We get together. It's the same kind of system, different presentations, but the same system over and over and over again. And I would say the last thing, and it looks like we're going to go into 3 parts here.
Okay.
So the last thing would be work in your flame and not in your wax. And I know that in different podcasts over the years, I've mentioned these. I'm not sure I've put them all in one podcast. But I think one of the most important things is to work in your flame and not in your wax. And by that, I mean, when you're in your flame, you're on fire, you're excited, you're passionate about what you're doing. People can see it in the way you behave. They can hear it in your voice. When you're working in your wax, it just takes all your energy away. People can hear that in your voice, and they can see that in the way you behave. And your flame and your wax can change over time. When I started BNI, I was King Arthur, leading the charge, building the company for 30 years. About 10 years ago, I kind of stepped out of the role of King Arthur and moved into the role of Colonel Sanders. which sort of the spokesperson for the organization. But that's my flame now. And I love it. I love pouring into people and I love doing these podcasts and sharing information. I love when BNI members come up to me and say, I listened to podcast number such and such, and I really learned something, and I'm able to put that to my business, and I really appreciate it. And so these were some of the early lessons I learned, and I've been applying them now for decades. And it looks, Priscilla, because I know there's a few more questions. Looks like we're going to go into part 3. Let me turn it back over for you today, unless you have any question for me, Priscilla.
No, I think that's great. I think part 3 deserves its own podcast because it's talking about the future.
Yeah, great.
So,
awesome.
So that's a little advertisement for the next podcast. All right. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Meisner. And I'd like to say that this podcast is sponsored by MeisnerAudioPrograms.com. And these audio programs will provide you with the tools and the inspiration to powerfully enhance your BNI experience. So check out the great material that's available to you at MeisnerAudioPrograms.com and then use the promo code IVAN50 for 50% off of everything. All of the proceeds go to the BNI Foundation. Thank you so much for listening. This is Priscilla Rice, and we look forward to having you join us again next week for another exciting episode of the official BNI podcast.